In this video, we're going to explore some really big abandoned projects around the world. We'll visit an empty island in Japan with a sad and difficult past. And we'll also check out a huge empty skyscraper in Venezuela where about 5,000 people used to live. Let's dive in and see these massive abandoned places. Number 5. Wonderland Amusement Park. Let's start with the Wonderland Amusement Park. It was supposed to be the biggest amusement park in Asia. Just a short 20-minute drive from Beijing, China. The plans for this park were made in the early 90s. The area where it was supposed to be built used to be a cornfield, and it would have been as big as Tokyo Disneyland in Japan. A company called Raidwood Group wanted this park to be their main project, and they wanted lots of people from the nearby big city to come visit. They started building the park in the 90s. The idea was to make a theme park like Disneyland with a big castle in the middle and buildings that looked like they were from medieval times around it. But in 1998, when they were halfway done building the park, they suddenly stopped and left everything behind. People in the area had different ideas about why this happened. Some thought the place was cursed, and others said there was a big grave found while digging. But the real reason was simpler. The company had arguments with the local government and the farmers who were using that land even before they started building. They couldn't agree on how much the land was worth, and they couldn't find a solution. So the company had to give up on the project because they couldn't keep going. When the company left, the half-built rides and buildings started to fall apart, and nature slowly took over. The local farmers went back to farming the land, and it looked like a mix of abandoned medieval-style structures and growing plants. In 2008, the company tried to start the project again, but it didn't work. The buildings were too damaged, and they couldn't fix them. 5 years later, they finally tore down what was left of the structures, and that was the end of the project. Number 4. The Memphis Pyramid. This huge building in Memphis, Tennessee, was inspired by the pyramids in Egypt. The original plan was to build 3 pyramids by the river, like the ones in Giza, Egypt. They were going to be 2/3 the size of the real ones. The idea was to make a famous landmark for Memphis, like the Gateway Arch in Street Louis or the Eiffel Tower in Paris. The plan didn't start until the 1980s when John Hartz, Mark Hartz's son, brought it back. They changed the plan to just one big pyramid that would be one of the largest in the world. Construction started in 1989 and it opened in 1991. But even before it was finished, there were problems. They couldn't afford to build everything they wanted inside, like a music museum or a theme park. When it opened, it was used as a basketball arena, and a lot of people came to see it. But the toilets got clogged and flooded the basement because the sewer system couldn't handle so many people. The pyramid was used for basketball games, concerts, and even a famous boxing match. But it didn't have a permanent team, so it was mostly empty. They tried to bring an NBA team there, but they left after 3 years for a newer arena. For a while, they didn't know what to do with the pyramid. Some ideas were to turn it into a theme park, a casino, or a mall, but none of those happened. Finally, Bass Pro Shops, a big store, decided to lease the pyramid and turn it into a store. Now, it's the world's biggest Bass Pro Shop. Lots of people visit it for shopping, archery, shooting, and even a laser arcade. Since the change, the pyramid is doing well, with millions of people visiting every year. Number 3. Hashima Island. Not far from Nagasaki, Japan, there's a small island that's only 500 meters wide. This island, Hashima, has old buildings, walls, and ruins from the 1900s. It's like a snapshot from the past that tells a story about Japan's history. Hashima Island was first settled in 1887 when people found a lot of coal under the sea nearby. A company called Mitsubishi bought the island and made a coal mining place. They built big walls around the island to protect it from storms. Around 1916, they built homes, a school, a hospital, and fun things like a cinema and a pool for the people who worked there. At its peak, about 5,300 people lived on the island in 1959. But things changed. In the late 1960s, Japan started using more oil instead of coal. This meant many coal mines closed, including the one on Hashima. People left, and the island became empty. It stayed like that for years. The buildings got old, and nature started taking over. Around 2002, the ownership of the island changed, and it was open to journalists to explore. A few years later, even regular people could visit, and it became a popular tourist spot to see old buildings from the past. Hashima Island was even considered to be a UNESCO World Heritage Site because of its historical value and well-preserved buildings. But this idea faced opposition. because the island had a dark history. During the 1930s and World War II, many Korean and Chinese prisoners were forced to work there in awful conditions. Some even lost their lives because of how bad it was. Even though there was opposition, Hashima Island became a World Heritage Site, and now many tourists visit every year to learn about its history. Number 2. Berlin Tempelhof Airport. One of the first airports in Berlin, Germany, is called Tempelhof. This place has seen and been a part of many important times in the country's history. In 1923, Tempelhof officially became an airport, and it was the main one in the area. During the late 1930s, it became one of the busiest airports globally because it was close to Berlin, the capital of Germany. After the Berlin Wall fell and Germany became one country again in 1989, Tempelhof was one of 3 airports in the city. But later, in 1996, the government of Berlin decided to close Tempelhof because it was old. They wanted to build a new airport called Berlin-Brandenburg. Even though people in Berlin wanted to keep Tempelhof open, it was closed in 2008 after the last flight. The city then decided to turn the old airport into a big park. They spent 60 million euros to do this. The new park, called Tempelhofer Feld, is now the biggest open space in a city in the world. It's even bigger than Central Park in New York City. Some parts of the old airport are still there, like parts of the building and the runway. Today, the park is used for events like music festivals and fairs. Number 1. Torre de David. And now, let's talk about the Torre de David, also known as Venezuela's squatter skyscraper. This tall building is in Caracas, the capital city of Venezuela. It's 170 meters tall and has 45 floors. They started building it in 1990, planning for it to have apartments and offices. But just 4 years later, they had to stop because of money problems in Venezuela. The government took over the building, but it was still not finished. It didn't have electricity, water, or even proper walls in some places. In 2001, the government tried to sell the building, but no one wanted to buy it because it was in bad shape. Around the same time, many people in Caracas didn't have homes. So about 200 families moved into the unfinished building. It became a kind of village inside. People made their own water system, and they even used motorcycles to move around inside the building. By 2011, about 2,500 people were living there, and sometimes even 5,000 people. In 2014, the government decided to help these families find new homes outside the city. By 2015, everyone had moved out to their new homes. People talked about what to do with the building. Some wanted to tear it down, and others wanted to make cheap homes there. In 2018, an earthquake damaged the top floors. Now the building is empty and not finished. Sometimes it's used for emergencies. What do you think about these big projects that were left behind? Let us know in the comments. If you want to see more about similar projects, you can watch our video about useless big projects. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.